welcome aboard, passengers, to Long Walk Talks Lost. My name is David Hensley. I will be your pilot, and I'm going to introduce my two co-pilots.
I'm Cara Hayes.
And I'm Robert Brafford.
And we are kicking off with our inaugural episode of our 20-year retrospective on the ABC hit series Lost. This episode is coming out on Sunday the 22nd, which is the 20-year anniversary of Lost. So these two guys came to me over the summer, and they said, hey, what do you feel about doing a spinoff of Long Walk Talks where we talk about Lost? And I said, no, absolutely not. We're not doing another spinoff show. But it had been so long since we did a Long Walk Talks that I said, all right, well, you know what? We're just going to pivot, and now we're going to talk about Lost for the foreseeable future. So let's kick it off with, how about you guys tell me how you got into Lost? Robert, let's start with you.
So I was there from the pilot episode. I'd seen the trailers, the posters, that kind of TV spot that would end with Dominic Monaghan, saying, guys, where are we? And that really... trailer-ready way. And at that time in 2004, Lord of the Rings, the films were just kind of one of the defining pieces of pop entertainment in my brain. And so pretty much anything that a cast member was in, I would check out. So, I saw Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen in theaters. I saw, a lot of really crappy sci-fi made-for-TV films that John Rhys Davies did. And yeah, when I saw Dominic Monaghan was on this new show about people on an island, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm there. Like, there was other stuff that looked interesting, but that was kind of the foremost thing for me.
Nice. So you're a day one watcher, huh?
Yep. And pretty much stayed all the way through watching it live till the series concluded. I did drift off a little bit, I think midway through season 3. I felt like the show had lost momentum. And it was never a decision as much as just I stopped watching it live or taping it to watch later in the week, like literally taping it with a VHS in a VCR with buttons and everything. That was a different time. And yeah, then I started hearing that it really picked back up. So I just binged it and caught up. And from 4 through 6, I was just, again, there live all the way to the finale.
Nice. Cara, what about you? How did you get into the show?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a pretty similar adventure for me. I have always gravitated towards anything that looks weird or different or not romance crap. That's me. And you show me something that there's a plane crash and people survive, and yeah, it looked weird, and I had to be a part of that. And kind of like Robert, I did kind of drop off for a couple seasons, I think, and then got back into it and just was rehooked.
Now, your general fear of flying didn't have a factor in you watching it?
Well, I was actually sitting here trying to think, like, when did that happen versus Lost? And they probably were... It must have been after that, but not too long. So yeah, it may have been just after. Yeah.
Nice. Lost was completely off of my radar for the first 4 seasons that it aired. I didn't really know much about it. I knew that it existed and it was on TV, but it was something I never watched. And then Christmas 2009. No, I'm sorry. It had to have been over 2008, because some friends of mine from college went away, and then they came back after the new year, and they had all binged the first 4 seasons of Lost in preparation for season 5, which was starting soon. And they said, we're obsessed with this show. You've got to watch it. You got to get into it. And I said, okay. I gave it a shot. At the time, the first 3 seasons were streaming on ABC. So I watched the first 3 episodes. I got through Tabula Rasa, and I was like, I'm just not feeling this show. I'm not really into it. And they said, no, you got to get through episode 4. You got to get through Walkabout and then decide if you're done or not. And so I did, and son of a bitch, they were right. After the reveal at the end of Walkabout, I was fully on board. I watched the first 3 seasons on the ABC website, and then the fourth season was out on DVD. So here's a very old-fashioned sentence for you. To watch the fourth season, I drove to Blockbuster, and I rented the DVDs, watched them all that way, got through season 4. I had been doing this as season 5 was airing. So by the time I finished season 4, I had to find and download illegal torrents of the episodes, each individual one. The downloads varied in quality from episode to episode.
What language were the subtitles in?
That's a great question. I wish I could remember. Actually, this computer over here to my left probably still has them somewhere.
Oh, God.
My very old editing computer that's still set up right next to me. They're on there somewhere, I'm sure. Or wait. Yeah, no, I had that at the point. So anyway, I got caught up with season 5 in time to watch the season finale live. And then, like everyone else, I had to then experience the joy of waiting 8 or 9 months to watch the next season.
Hey, listen, it's still better than the sometimes 2 years we're waiting now.
Yeah, remember when they made 24 episodes of television and then,
Yes.
3 months later they start the next batch of 24?
I do, and I remember it fondly.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not that old.
Which, to be fair, still happens on like network TV with plenty of shows. It's just they're not the ones that usually get talked about.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, it does blow my... Like, we just recently finished watching, the second season of House of the Dragon, which there was a year and a half between those seasons, and now it's looking like it's going to be another 2 between 2 and 3. And like Robert said, there was a point at which every season of television was consistently 20-something episodes. You look at the first 3 seasons of Lost, the first season is 25 episodes. Season 2 is 24, and season 3 is 23 episodes.
And it's not like these were just being churned out. Like at the time, this was some of the most expensive television being produced. Like the pilot, I think at the time, set a record for the most expensive episode of network television ever made, just largely due to the expense of obtaining and transporting and disassembling a commercial airliner on a beach in Oahu.
Yeah. Well, so with all that in mind, since we're going to be doing this deep dive into the show, Cara, what are your overall thoughts, having seen it from beginning to end, going back to it now, as a whole, as a TV show? What are your thoughts on Lost?
I was one of the few people that I knew who absolutely loved the end of it. I
Thank you.
There's not going to be disagreement on that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Actually.
Which is great.
Somehow 3 of us wound up in a room together who all liked the finale. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm excited to re-meet my friends from Lost. It was so fun, watching the first episode and just being like, oh my God, I remember them. Oh wait, look, oh no, it's Hurley, and all of the emotions that come with that. So I'm very excited.
Nice. Robert, what about you? What are your overall thoughts?
I think just for me, what I remember most, and in the reviewing that we've started already, is just the sense of scope that this show always had and how it was filmed and produced. Just, in the first 4 episodes that we'll get to later, but just the number of shots that just feel like something so sweeping and dramatic that you, again, just would not normally have seen on network TV in the early 2000s. And even as I'm thinking about going back over it, I'm remembering, just all through just shots of, places they found on the island, of just, things that were weird or things that were epic. I mean, I still think about, not to jump way ahead, but in the series finale, a scene of 2 people charging at each other across a rock for a fist fight, still feeling like one of the most hell yeah cuts to commercial I've ever seen on TV. And yeah, so just the ambition and the scope of what they were doing, and I think the story they ultimately succeeded in telling, for not without some fits and starts or some stumbles along the way, but just ultimately a really amazing story about good, evil, redemption, forgiveness, and yeah, just such a rich thing to dive into, and I'm looking to get back into that.
Agreed. I think this show is the definition of it's about the journey and not the destination. Cara and I, for the last almost a year now, have been on a real Stephen King deep dive, and Stephen King is the master of it's all about the journey. He's kind of well known for fumbling the ending, and Does the ending of Lost 100% stick? That's debatable. I, like Cara and you, Robert, I love the ending of the show. It's been a sore point for a lot of watchers. But I think, in my experience talking to people about the series finale over the years, the conclusion that I've come to is it depends on how involved in the show you were. People who watched every episode, who got together and discussed theories with their friends week to week and all of that, tend to have enjoyed the show and the finale overall. But the more casual viewers who didn't watch every episode, who weren't there like nerding out about it, were let down by the ending. And I think that makes a difference. Just how much you cared about the show and the journey that it took you on. And I think that's something that's really going to be fun this time around, is going on that journey with the two of you and seeing where that takes us.
Yeah.
But overall, I love this show. I love these characters. I really don't even so much care about the story as much as I care about the individual characters and their arcs. So,
and I think that is, in the grand scope of it all, just the best way to approach it, because I do think from a perspective of what did these characters come to the island to do, what did they need, I think that's what the finale succeeds at best, in the sense of, hey, what was going on with this, and what was the explanation behind that, and wait a minute, why did this happen? Yeah, that wasn't something that the show ultimately was that interested in digging into. And I will say, I've always kind of understood why people got ticked off about that, because a huge chunk of the marketing around this show was, ooh, don't you want to find out what happens? Don't you want, like, it's not like they didn't tease people about, oh, there are answers waiting around the corner. Just wait, you'll get there. And while I'm still okay with the story they ended up telling, I do kind of get the resentment around, oh, yeah, no, we were never going to, like, you were running at that red flag, but we were always going to yank that out of the way for what we really wanted to do.
Yeah, in terms of, like, the J.J. Abrams mystery box of it all, there are far more questions than there are answers in the overall scope of this show, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't need to spell out every single thing for me.
I've seen websites that do, like, dig into, like, well, actually, if you look at this, you can find the but a lot of that is pretty deep dive fan theorizing, which is fine, but I think that is sometimes doing a little more work than the writers were actually intending to do in what they put on television.
Well, looking forward to when we actually start getting into episodes, which is going to start with our first actual episode on Wednesday, the 25th, I think is what I said. Let me look at the calendar real quick. I know I just said the premiere is going to be on Sunday, the 22nd. Yeah. So after this episode, the first actual discussion episode is going to be on Wednesday, the 25th, and we made that decision to put these episodes up on Wednesday nights, because that is when Lost aired on ABC. It was one of their flagship shows for 6 years. So week to week, we are not going to be a episode-specific podcast. We're not going to be breaking down individual episodes like a lot of other podcasts do. We're looking as more of a retrospective over the entire show, and we're doing that by breaking these episodes off into chunks of 3 or 4 at a time. And I think that makes more sense conceptually, looking at the whole show 20 years later, than it does to look at each individual episodes. So, for example, the first episode that's going to come out after this one, we're going to be discussing the first 4. So Pilot Part 1, Pilot Part 2, Tabula Rasa, and Walkabout, and the journey that the show takes you on up until that point. Because it's not until the end, we'll discuss this more in depth in the next episode, but you won't really get an idea of what this island is about until the end of episode 4. And we're not going to be shy about spoilers on this show either, because a lot of these episodes are soon to be 20 years old.
Yeah. I do think that, it's not necessary to look, like you said, we're not doing a beat-by-beat breakdown of episodes and being like, aha, this item actually pays off in episode 513, but yeah, I think at this point, talking about how things fit into the general arc of the show is something we're all considering fair game.
Yeah, and if you do want to do that sort of, hey, this thing pays off 5 seasons from now, go to Lostpedia. The submitters on Lostpedia really do that deep here's where this line pays off later kind of thing.
I actually pulled that up just to sort of look over it before coming here, and the number of like random things that are hyperlinked with text, like just a summary of, Jack wakes up in forest and sees a white tennis shoe hanging on a tree, and it's like, white tennis shoe has a link. Oh yeah, just all the stuff that just plays into that.
So that's going to be our week-to-week structure, where we will have things like foreshadowing discussions. It's pretty well known that the writers didn't exactly know where the show was going to go in the early seasons. So is it actual foreshadowing, or did they just get lucky, or did they look back and go, oh, hey, we did this, it could pay off? We're going to be discussing things like that. Character arcs and how they pay off in the chunks that we watch them in, things like that. So as we get ready to go into that, I want to ask you guys, this show is kind of famous for what would I guess now be considered meme-worthy kind of lines, very famous lines. So overall, over the course of the entire show, what are some of your favorite lines that you're looking forward to hearing again?
I'm very much looking forward to a bearded, like half out of his mind Matthew Fox screaming, "We have to go back, we have to go back," which is funny because I started a rewatch of this a couple years back with my then girlfriend, now wife, Gina. And that was the one thing about the show that she knew. She doesn't know the context. She doesn't know where it's happening in the show. But whenever, like I mentioned it, she'll be like, oh, yeah, we have to go back. We have to go back. And I'm just like, you have no idea how much that line blew my mind when I watched it. But, yeah, so that's... and to be fair, I do think that is a moment that like actually did move the show into another gear from where it took place.
I think that after the end of Walkabout, We Have to Go Back is the next like huge revelation of the show, like the big game changer moment of the show. Cara, what about you?
Well, I think for me, one of the so anybody who knows me knows I really try not to have feelings or emotions or anything like that. But this show really brought that out of me. I think this was probably one of the first times that I had a show where I cared so much about the people that I felt emotions. And for me, I can't wait to see if I cry as much at Not Penny's boat as I did the first time, because I will say through the finale, I sobbed the entire time. Can
we talk about it? Not even a spoken line, just an image that like all of us can immediately think about, just the composition and just the face that's on screen at the same moment you see those words.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, one of the people who introduced me to this show, who so loved Charlie that he would do the tape around the fingers and write words on them, and also would just, after that episode, would write that across his palm. Oh man, you're making yourself cry, and we're not even.
I know.
We're still 2.5 seasons away from that moment.
There are episodes of television where I'm like that. Like I will try to describe the plot to usually again Gina, because she's the one who has to listen to me do this. And I'll just get partway through and just be like, and then the president's in the cathedral, and he's talking in Latin because he's got so much going on. And she'll be like, I'm never watching The West Wing with you, Robert. It's like fair.
Yeah.
For me, I gotta go with the classic "Live Together, Die Alone." It's just such an integral part of the show, to the point where later people actually start calling out the usage of it. I think Kate at one point tells Jack, if you say "Live Together or Die Alone" one more time, I'm gonna punch you. I
remember that exactly. It's Rose, which makes it even funnier because she would knock him on his ass.
Yeah. To the point where in our other shows, mainly our wrestling shows, everyone has nicknames. So like in This Is a Work, Robert, you are the distinguished gentleman. Your co-host Chris is the fashion plate. Your wife Gina on This Is a Takeover is, even though we never use this one, bless your heart, Brafford. And Shelby is Death Ray Patterson. I kind of almost gave us all nicknames like David Live Together, Die Alone, Hensley, just so that you, Robert, could be Robert Walt Brafford. I was waiting on just the shouting, the repeated shouting of the word Walt to come up. We're still a few episodes away from that now. I think Walt Watch is only on 1 so far.
To be fair, it is his very first line on screen.
Yeah. It's pretty iconic. So, Robert, something that you had brought up when we were discussing this episode for discussion topics, best of the best. Where would you put this? Do you think this is like a top 5, top 10 kind of show?
I would put it probably outside of my top 5 right now, because as much as I love it, it does have some flaws and bumps along the way. Like they're just, characters that were planned to go one way that because of events in the real world or just shifting ideas in the writer's room, plots that don't go anywhere, a lot of things like that. Now, again, this will be the first time I have start to finish rewatched it, so I'm curious if it comes back up. Me saying it's not in my top 5 doesn't mean I don't love it or that it's not a very defining piece of pop culture experience for me, because the way I loved this show starting in high school through its finale definitely shaped a lot about how I watch TV going forward. But there are things I would rank above it in terms of just like as a complete successful start to finish piece of art. It would probably squeeze this out of the top 5. That said, in terms of shows I would just recommend to people, because a lot of my favorite shows are sometimes hard watches, or I'm like, this one is something you have to dive into. Lost is one I would just say, like, watch this and it goes crazy. It's probably one of my easiest recommended shows.
Cara, what about you? Best of the best, top 5, what do we...
It's easily in my top 10, because I don't get invested in shows like this. At least especially at the time. For me at the time, it would have been like Law and Order and whatever iteration Law and Order was doing. I watched all of them. And yeah, that's about it. We had some comedies that we'd watch, but yeah, it's absolutely, in my top 10, even though, you have amazing shows nowadays, House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But this is still, for me, one of them.
Yeah, I agree. This is probably a top 5 show for me. I'd have to really sit down and think about what else would be on that list, which is weird to say because it's not just 5 years ago now on Long Walk Talks, me and Chris and Stan did a 20-year retrospective talking about movies and music and TV. And I'm certain I made a top 5 TV shows for that, but that was 5 years ago. But I know things like Community and Justified would be on there as well. This was just such an integral part of a period in my life. It's easily top 5 for me. So I can't wait to dive into these first 4 episodes with the two of you. Any other thoughts before we wrap this intro pilot episode up?
I'm looking forward to going on this ride with all you guys.
Me too.
Well, Robert, if people want to follow you online or reach out to you online, where can they do that at?
Well, since you forgot this time to specify somewhere besides Twitter, I am still holding out my little fort at RedbeardRob1 on the platform formerly known as Twitter. Might start trying to lean more on pop culture, which is something I do as kind of a corrective as election season heats up. Also on Instagram at RedbeardRob17.
And Cara, I know you're not big on social media, but if people want to follow you or reach out to you, can they do that?
I think so. I was just looking here. I know I'm on Instagram. It's at HistoryNerd1861. That doesn't tell you anything at all. I don't really do much of anything else. I don't really post many places, but maybe I should start. I don't know.
Well, we mostly just send each other memes.
Yes, that is what Instagram is for.
Yeah, pretty much. If you want to follow me, the best place to do that is on Instagram at DB Hensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us. To see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. And if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on. Live together, die alone.
Well,